let me start by kicking it off to Councilmember Dernova.
Thank you, Claire. I'll be brief. I want to just thank everybody for participating in the meeting. I want to thank Park and Planning and its associates for putting this together. And I also want to thank the City of College Park and our General Assembly colleagues in 21st District for being partners in making this come to fruition. So once again, thanks for everybody for participating.
Thank you. And would any of the other elected officials on the call like to say anything before we get started?
I may, Claire, if I can. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. And I want to thank Councilmember Dernova and MNCPC and the team, project team, for putting this together and for their hard work in getting this through at this point. This is just a part of the journey, and what is coming next is to get the project to the final stage, meaning the design and the construction. So we need everyone's help in getting funding into the MN Services budget. City of College Park is contributing, I believe $1.5 million, the state of Maryland also contributing. So everyone needs to speak up and ask the MNCPC in their new budget cycle to add money for the constructions and the design. There is an opportunity to speak tomorrow, but I think it's too late, but you can still write to them. And I believe you will be given the information and keep advocating for the project so that it is getting done finally. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Kushan, can we switch to the next slide?
Charvi, do you want to go next?
I think the next slide is an introduction. So I will introduce myself again for anyone who does not know me. My name is Claire Wurstel. I'm the lead strategic park planner with Park Planning and Development in the Department of Parks and Recreation. Been working on this project since we kicked it off. And our team that's going to be leading us today is the team from WXY.
Oh, sorry. I think some network error on Charlie's side, but I think we're back online. Sorry about that.
Okay. So I'm working with our other Park Planning and Development Division staff, Bridget Stesney, our Division Chief, Sonia Ewing, our Assistant Division Chief, Tanya Hedgepeth, our Supervisor, Laura Connolly, Sylvan Miles, and Paul Sun. And then we're working with WXY Architecture and Urban Design and TCT cost estimates to help us with the cost estimation on this project. Next slide. So this is where we are. We started in March. We went through our needs analysis. We met with many of you during our first stakeholder engagement in May. We then moved on to our test fits and site selection process, May through June, went into 2 concept designs from those site selections, and Kushan will walk you through how we narrowed that down to the 2 that you're going to see today. And we're here now in this stakeholder engagement meeting number 2, where we are going to present out everything that we've learned so far in this process. We will get your feedback, and everything will go then into the final report, which will be done in November. Next slide. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to Kushan, and he's going to introduce his team and then walk you through the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Claire. And thank you all the elected officials and all the community members who are here today. We really appreciate all your presence. I'm Kushan Dave. I'm a director at WXY Architecture and Urban Design. We are a design and planning practice based out of New York City and Washington, D.C. And we are really excited to be here today and work with you all on this very important initiative. It's also great to see many familiar faces. I've had the pleasure and opportunity to talk to many of you over the last many months, and all your comments and feedback have been very instrumental in shaping the overall design and planning process. So again, thank you very much for that. I'm also joined by Charvi Gupta, who is a planner and engagement specialist at WXY. You'll be hearing from her shortly, but Charvi, if you'd like to do a quick intro before we move on, that would be great.
Hello, I'm an urban planner with WXY, and thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we're looking forward to your feedback.
Great. Thanks, Charvi. And I'd also like to mention that in addition to WXY, we also have TCT Cost Consultants who are working with us to provide a cost opinion based on concept sketches and feasibility study that we have conducted. So with that, let's dive into the agenda and try and understand what will we be covering today. So our meeting should last approximately about 30 to 45 minutes with enough time for an open mic group discussion at the end of the presentation. Now, please feel free to write down your questions in the chat or save it with you, and we can address them at the end during our group discussion. And in terms of content that we'll cover today, we will do a quick recap on site selection process, including needs and program analysis, and the different sites that were considered in the feasibility process. We will also provide a quick summary of engagement and what we heard from community about their preferences and needs throughout our various sort of engagement and touch points that we have had. And lastly, we'll share the latest concept designs on the two final shortlisted sites that were identified through the feasibility study process. Those are Hollywood Park and Hollywood Plaza site. Now, please note that what you see today are not the final designs, but simply a way for us to confirm that the shortlisted sites can receive a building of such nature and that the site provides enough design and programmatic flexibility to be creative with indoor and outdoor spaces, as we'll see in the case of Hollywood Plaza later on. Now, there'll be plenty more opportunities from what I know in the future to inform the exact design and material nature of the building. But our hope is that through the entire feasibility process, we have nailed down some major design moves that address both community needs as well as operational and logistical needs of MNC PPC, so that the next phase of the design, when we get to that, those refinements can be quicker and more efficient and more cost effective. Next slide. Now, before we begin, a quick overview of Zoom control for attendees. Sure, a lot of you are already experts at this many years into the pandemic, but very quickly, as a side note, the meeting is being recorded and a copy will be available online on the project website shortly after. Attendees are automatically muted, but if you have questions or comments, please post them in the chat, and chat logo can be found at the bottom of your screen. Attendees are encouraged to participate in polling and discussions. When we get into group discussions, please use raise hand feature if you would want to avoid speaking over one another. Next slide. And lastly, we have a few basic polls that will pop up on your screen during the presentation. Presentation will be paused during that polling, so you'll have enough time to participate and share your responses. Attendees will only view the poll after we launch it. It'll be a small pop-up window similar to the screenshot that you see at the bottom of the slide. And once it launches, we will ask you to select most appropriate option or options and then click submit. At the end of the polling, we'll share the polling result after everybody has responded. All right, so let's do a quick poll to get you all warmed up. Charvi from our team will take you through the questions and share results with you all. Charvi, over to you.
Thank you, Kashan. So we have the first poll, and you should be able to view it. And it's a basic poll to ask you where in North College Park are you calling in from. We have 4 options here, and I already see that you guys have started responding. So the first option is Area 1. West of Rhode Island Avenue and north of Erie Street. Area 2, east of Rhode Island Avenue, north of Huron Street. Area 3, north of Greenbelt Road, south of Erie Street and Huron Street, and Area 4, which is south of Greenbelt Road. And in case you're not calling in from any of these 4 areas or from North College Park, please feel free to select the 5th option and type in chat where you're calling in from. I do see that a few people are still answering the polls, so I'm gonna give it another few seconds. Okay, I think majority of you have answered the poll, and I'm going to go ahead and end it. So looks like a majority of you are calling in from area 2, which is like 45%, and followed by area 1, which is like 20%. So it's a great participation from all of you. Moving on to the next polling question, which is, how did you hear about the meeting? And here we have options including news media, City of College Park website, MNC PPC website, council members newsletter, social media, word of mouth, and other. And please let us know, how did you hear about the meeting? Was it one of the engagements, in-person engagements that our project team members were at, or through any other source? I do see a lot of you have participated, so I'm going to go ahead and end the polling question. And looks like majority of you, 57%, have participated, heard about the meeting through council members newsletter, which is great, and also through social media and word of mouth. So that's amazing. I'm going to go ahead and stop it, and over to you, Kushan.
Perfect. Thanks, Charvi. So for the next few slides, we want to quickly recap what we have done so far in terms of our site selection process and program analysis. So you have a bit more context before we go into and review the design options together. Now, a lot of content that you will see on the following slide was covered under phase 1 engagement that we conducted back in May. And I believe a copy of the presentation and the webinar video should be available on the project website in case you'd like to review it in more detail. So it may seem like we are jumping over topics, but all of this content has been covered previously. We'll try and summarize so that you have a little bit more context. Next slide. So as you might remember, our team conducted an extensive existing conditions analysis to fully understand the spectrum of challenges and opportunities that exist within North College Park. And in parallel to demographic trend analysis, we looked at 5 key lenses that you see on the bottom left of your screen. They include built context that looks more closely at physical aspects of the study area, access and proximity that identifies barriers to access and adjacency to other uses, environmental impacts to understand areas that are regulated, including brownfield properties, growth potential that assesses the physical potential of the site to accommodate future programming needs, and shared infrastructure to avoid unnecessary infrastructure such as parking and other functionality requirements, thereby optimizing the overall cost of construction. Now, we looked at the existing landscape of recreational facilities through these 5 lenses, and as it can be seen on the map to your right, North College Park does not have sufficient service coverage when you look at a basic 5-minute travel shed analysis. Next slide. Now, in addition and in parallel to kind of needs analysis, our team also conducted a quick review of various community and sort of recreational needs assessment that has been completed by the county. The two that kind of were sort of front and center was the 2020 Community and Senior Recreation Needs and Assessment Study and the 2022 Countywide Parks and Recreation Needs Assessment Study. And they reflected community needs and design for a new recreational space that was focused heavily on fitness and social connection. And we also noted a lot of feedback on the lack of program that support the younger population as well as active adults. And we also noticed that there were specific requirements and specific demands for spaces like gymnasium, multipurpose room, and meeting rooms. Now, in addition to these assessments, there is currently also a growing trend that we are seeing across the country around programs for active adults. And so flex spaces that can either be indoor or outdoor were further experimented throughout our design process. Next slide. Now, in parallel and from a facility planning and programming perspective, we also did a quick review of types of facilities that exist within the county and those that are under 20,000 square feet to better understand the kind of areas that such a facility requires and to better understand what we call as use adjacencies. which means which programs can complement each other. As you can see on the chart to your right of your screen, majority of the facilities include a combination of programs such as gymnasium, multipurpose room, teen and senior programs, as well as other fitness-related programs. Now, once we completed our basic analysis, we looked at the entire North College Park through each of the 5 lenses that I mentioned earlier and systematically filtered sites by asking critical questions around parameters that we established. So simple questions that were asked like, what is the site currently used for? Is the site large enough? How close is the site to existing park and rec facility? Are there environmental challenges? Are there access-related challenges? Does it pose sort of any other access challenges like crossing a busy thoroughfare? Is it suited for a facility of this size? And all the sort of physical and kind of programmatic questions. And we analyzed data and simultaneously had discussions with property owners, and we established a list of 9 potential sites. And the graphic that you see on that slide kind of gives you a little sneak peek into our back-end analytical process. And you can see how we kind of filtered from almost 3,000 plus parcels to identify 9 potential sites using available property and parcel level data that we gathered from the county. Now, our list of candidate sites included a mix of private and public sites. And you might remember seeing this when we all last met. So that the county has a range of options should private owners not agree to come to the table or if there are any other future hurdles in terms of site acquisition. Now, some of the prominent and publicly owned sites include Hollywood Park, which is located west of Greenbelt Metro Station, Hollywood Elementary School located along Rhode Island Avenue, and an empty Board of Education site, which is at the intersection of 51st and Huron Street. In terms of privately owned sites, they were owned by Endelman Living Trust, which is just east of 52nd Avenue and south of Lackawanna Street, labeled as number 1 on the map. Site owned by Shaban, located along Rhode Island Avenue and labeled as number 3 on the map, and Branchville Industrial Park along 51st Street, labeled number 4 on the map. Al Huda School, just north of Hollywood Park, labeled 5 on the map, and parcel owned by Polish Club, which is labeled 9 on the map, and it's located just south of the Beltway along Edgewood Road. Now, each of these sites were further analyzed on a less preferable to more preferable scale across a list, the kind of range of 5 parameters that you see on the screen. So we looked at ownership, access and environmental challenges, growth potential, and the potential of the site to share infrastructure. And such comparison really allowed our team and the department at the county leadership to kind of really clearly assess the trade-offs that were associated with each of the site. And at the end, following many rounds of community inputs, Hollywood Plaza, Hollywood Park, and Hollywood Elementary sites were selected for further test fit studies. Now, next slide. Now, at a more broad level, many of the shortlisted sites presented challenges around accessibility, adjacency to incomparable uses, environmentally regulated areas, and so forth. And discussions with property owners further shed light on the concerns around security, parking, and flow of traffic, and other sort of related issues. Now, let's go one by one through these sites and understand the challenges that they presented. So first, looking at Endelman Living Trust site, which is labeled as number 1 on the map. Now, this site is fairly large site, but it is heavily wooded and falls within the regulated area as identified under county's green infrastructure plan. A regulated area, as you may remember, has very tight development constraints, and they are put in place, and rightly so, to preserve and protect our critical natural resources. Lastly, for this particular site, access is limited from Lackawanna Street, which is a narrow residential street, and there can be traffic issues around traffic bottleneck. Shaban site, which is located between Rhode Island Avenue and between Nantucket and Edgewood, and marked as number 2 on your screen, presents sort of an interesting proposition. It is a bit tight, but you can conceptually think about a multi-layered community center. Now, the challenge comes around relocating its existing businesses on site and its implication on parking demand, which again takes away substantial amount of area at a very, very critical intersection. Now, in addition, freight and loading docks will require separate ingress and egress points, and that makes the site fairly constrained when locating or siting a building here. And lastly, as you can imagine, outdoor space provisions will be very limited. And even if it is provided, its quality may be compromised given the adjacency to a busy thoroughfare. Now, looking at Branchville Industrial Site, which is along 51st Street and marked as number 3 on your screen. Now, this site, contrary to Shaban property, has a lot of area that can house a new facility. But when we reviewed sort of the statewide brownfield data points, it pointed to a potential oil spill or potential spill that existed on the property at a certain point in time. And this can potentially add a lot of remediation cost, and that is a substantial cost to any future facility construction. Now, of course, this needs to be studied in detail and further studies need to be conducted, but there is also another challenge. Like adjacency to industrial area can be counterproductive to a public amenity. So I think that's also something that does not work for this particular site. When we looked at Al Huda School, which is marked as number 4, and it's located just north of Hollywood Park, it has challenges around existing operations, so right of way in terms of accessibility and on-site security. These concerns kind of make it a little difficult to have a community center on site. When we looked at the MT Board of Education site, which is east of 51st Avenue and south of Huron Street and marked as number 5 on your screen, it is largely wooded and is currently being used by the county as a mulch site that will need to be relocated. Now, further, the site is not as centrally located as some of the other available ones and does not provide the desired ease of access that is sought by the community members. And lastly, Polish Club, labeled number 6 and located just south of the Beltway, has again a thick tree cover. It poses access-related challenges and falls under evaluation area as outlined under county's green infrastructure plan. And that means that it'll demand additional development constraints. So again, a lot of hurdles in terms of what can be built on that site. Now, when looking at these challenges, it is important to remember that while these sites may not be an ideal fit for a community center type facility, they can be easily used creatively and be used by the county for other parks and recreational uses. And our hope is that these candidate sites act as a repository for future potential recreational uses. Now let's briefly look at what we heard through the various touch points we had with the community. With more than 130 touch points that we made through various engagement efforts conducted by the department, we had web surveys, we had about 61 responses through the web surveys, we had virtual meetings, we had about 40 participants in those meetings, we had breakout groups, we had in-person engagement at countywide events, and we had small group engagement with property owners and interested members of the community. And we gathered a lot of interesting, very relevant feedback around sort of the needs and preferences, and especially locational and programmatic preferences. And what you see on the screen here, especially the map to the center of the screen, you can see that majority of the residents preferred to have the new facility in either Area 2 or Area 1. And Area 2, which is that you all kind of voted, is east of Rhode Island Avenue and north of Huron Street. In terms of programmatic preferences, we got a lot of interesting feedback around including a mix of fitness-related and social spaces. So for example, gymnasium, aerobic space, more multipurpose rooms, more flex spaces that can accommodate a variety of needs for a growing community were highly desired. We also heard about hosting potential community festivals, be it wine festivals, farmers market, any kind of festival community events that can complement and further activate a space that those sort of uses were more desired by the community members. Next slide. And in parallel, we had sort of in-person touch points, and that sort of provided or sort of shed light on on similar feedback around locational and programmatic preferences, but we also received feedback on the need to have a mix of outdoor and indoor activity spaces. Community members at some of these touch points, they gave preferences to walkability and accessibility. At the in-person meeting at College Park Friday night live event, we showed 2 quick test fits on sort of Hollywood Plaza and Hollywood Park, and many, if not most, of the community members preferred Hollywood Plaza site for further design refinements. So our team took all the feedback and we went back to our drawing boards to create 3 test fit studies and a bit more detailed concept study on 2 sites. And in the process, we worked with MNC PPC to better understand operational and maintenance challenges, and that helped us further fine-tune these concept designs. Now, concept designs that you'll see in this section are conceptual, as the word suggests. And as I mentioned earlier, the intention is to make sure that the site works from a programmatic, for the program that is being planned for, and that we nail down big design moves while addressing both community needs as well as operational logistical needs, so that the next phase of design refinements can be quicker and more efficient. As a reminder, this will be our last section of the presentation, and then we'll open it up for discussion and comments. Now, as I mentioned earlier, our team conducted initial design test fits on 3 sites: Hollywood Plaza, Hollywood Park, and Hollywood Elementary School. Each of them presented their pros and cons. So while Hollywood Plaza is a bit more urban and provides the desired ease of access to the community, Hollywood Park has the serene natural backdrop that provides great vistas and a host of potential outdoor recreational uses. Hollywood Elementary School, however, presented a few challenges. The way the existing building is sited, that the existing building, the school is sited, divides the whole site into a front and a back. The front of the building, you have a drop-off loop, you have scattered parking, and you have modulars or temporary classrooms that have been installed over time. And at the rear of the building, which is, while it's empty, it is inaccessible and not really visible from the street. Now, not to mention that southern portion of the site is completely wooded, and that provides additional challenges. Now, as such, well, we can fit a building within the premise. It will require additional parking provisions. It will require us to build more parking, in other words. And more importantly, it will create operational hurdles and access bottlenecks during school hours, especially during drop-off and pickup. Now, given all these challenges, this site may be better suited for other future parks and recreational infrastructure that benefits the community, and not necessarily a community center, but that's something that we can all chew on. Now, in parallel to our test fit studies, and given the various programmatic analysis our team conducted, we started to establish the required programmatic adjacencies. Now, program adjacency is a mix of sort of visual and physical adjacency that might be beneficial from an operational, maintenance, and other building service related issue. So for example, fitness center should be in visual and physical proximity of the facility administration team. Multipurpose rooms should be near an outdoor space to allow for spillover of activities. Interior spaces should maximize outdoor spillover spaces where possible. Restrooms should be planned as a single wet core to limit plumbing related costs and MEP related costs, and provision of family rooms within the facility should be maximized. Now, these adjacencies or these sort of rules help us create spatial relationships that can be complementary to the overall design and functioning of the building. Now, once the program adjacencies were established, we started to detail out the 2 shortlisted sites at Hollywood Plaza and Hollywood Park site. Now, here you see a conceptual design option for Hollywood Plaza site. As you can see on the site diagram to your right, the facility can be located on the southwest corner of the site, which is by and large empty. Now, this section of the Hollywood Plaza does house the farmers market on the weekend, and that is an important design criteria for us. Now, our overall strategy will be to accommodate the farmers market in the front plaza, but also allow the market to bleed into the interior of the building. Now, as you can see on the 3D diagram to your left, our approach is to create almost 2 separate buildings or 2 separate wings. The big block that you see is the gymnasium, and the low flat portion of the building houses all the other programs or spaces that we will get into in a minute. Now, both these wings are connected by an interior walkway. And I'm going to try and see if, as I'm talking, if I can actually annotate or at least, let's see. I'm going to try and do this. So this is sort of the front plaza right here. And this is the internal courtyard space. And these are I'm going to mark sort of as wing 1 and wing 2. These are sort of the two separate wings of the building, and these are connected by a walkway. And our intent is that we can kind of keep the walkway open so that pedestrians can go through that. So farmers market can actually bleed right into the courtyard. So that becomes an extended space. And we can come back to this idea, and we can get to that in our discussion as well. Now, this walkway can be opened up, like I said, during farmers market type event, and the front plaza and courtyard can seemingly start to become one giant space, but it also kind of provides other flexibility. I can even see mini community festivals being held here that takes over sort of the entire parking lot or even a portion of the parking lot. And even thinking about sort of summer drive-in type movie nights where people can pull over in their cars kind of and bring their chairs and kind of almost have a mini picnic. Now, there's just so much potential, and I'd love to kind of get all your feedback in terms of what else can be kind of done from a design strategy point of view. Next slide. Now, this slide shows the plan in a bit more detail, and you can see how the building is separated, as I was mentioning, sort of almost in two different wings connected with an interior walkway. So right one being the gymnasium, the big block on the right marked as sort of number 12. And while the left wing is sort of where you'll have all your programmatic spaces. So your senior rooms, fitness, multipurpose rooms, and so forth. Now, another advantage of this plan is that the central courtyard or the deck space provides ample of spillover opportunities for other interior programs. So for example, if you book one of the multipurpose rooms, they will be equipped with foldable doors, so you can open up your event to the outdoor deck space. The two multipurpose rooms can also be combined into one larger space should that be needed for a large community event. Now, you can even imagine that the courtyard being used for outdoor Zumba or yoga classes or even after-school events. Also, the separation of the build structure into two wings provides operational flexibility to the staff who may want to keep certain sections of the building open after our events. So for example, gymnasium can be designed for an evening event, and you would not necessarily need to go through the building to access that event or that space. Now, there's a lot of potential and flexibility here, and we can come back to this site in our discussion, but let's quickly look at Hollywood Park site, and then we can come back, we can kind of zoom in, look at things in a little bit more detail in our discussion. So compared to Hollywood Plaza, the Hollywood Park site provides a slightly different alternative. To begin with, it is owned by the county, so there is a clear advantage there in terms of what can happen there in the short and long run. But more broadly, the biggest advantage is the provision of outdoor space. As you can see on the side diagram to your right, there is a potential to create new soccer field with potentially more spaces that can add additional fields, be it sort of cricket field, something that is being demanded more and more of parks and recreational facilities in the county, or any other type of outdoor recreational facility. I mean, in addition, we can also start to create a half-mile walking and jogging track that can complement community centers' fitness-related objectives. Now, this is not to say that you need to have a facility, a building to create a jogging and running track, but from a programmatic perspective, having these outdoor amenity spaces frees up the need to have more fitness-related program within the interior of the building, if that makes sense. And that means you can probably use that area to do something else and provide other types of uses. Now, the building, which is located in the center of the site to avoid any disruption to existing trees, has a closed courtyard that can act as outdoor spillover for interior spaces. Again, a concept which is very similar to what you all saw at the Hollywood Plaza site. Further, we can also restructure the parking that's already existing to create few more spots so that there are no bottlenecks there. And you can imagine the ball field, the soccer field, and the community center, all of them being used at the same time without necessarily really having sort of any parking bottlenecks there. Next slide. And when you kind of zoom into the building plan, you can see how an enclosed courtyard creates a very interesting space overall. I can almost imagine that the courtyard, which is at the center, kind of almost acts as provides a respite to sort of people who just want to spend some quality time, either reading a book, listening to music, doing their homework, playing an instrument, or even meditating, right? Another feature of this design is the open space facing the soccer field, which is marked as 15 on the drawing. And as well as sort of multi-purpose room, it kind of acts as a way to, as spillover space for both the fitness center, which is number 6, and the kind of multi-purpose room, which is number 5 on the plan. I'm going to quickly draw that right here so you all can see. So you can see how both these spaces can have a spillover outside onto this sort of deck. So there are a mix of sort of indoor-outdoor space variations that we can have here. Now, senior room is again right by the entrance, similar to the other facility, and that allows sufficient privacy and ease of access. And the wide lobby area can also house computer or digital library station, and that can provide additional flex programming opportunity. The service entry will be at the rear of the site, and we can definitely come back to one or both of these examples in our discussion sections, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview of these two options before we dive into group discussions. Now, before we kind of do that, there is sort of one quick poll maybe that sort of helps us tee up the discussion points. Which design options, if any, should be further developed by the county? So Jarvis just launched the poll. We can again, I'm sure you'll have many questions, thoughts, comments that you'd want to share, but this hopefully helps us to give you a little bit of a background on our design approach before we open it up for group discussions. All right. I see 15, 16 of you, about 60% of you have responded so far. Give it a couple more seconds. All right, let's go ahead and end the poll. And let's share the results. About 74% of you preferred Hollywood Plaza site, about 26% preferred the Hollywood Park site. Again, clear sort of pros and cons. And I think this is a good sort of a pivot to get into our group discussions. So Char, if you can go to the next slide. And it'll be really great if folks can either raise their hands or unmute their mic. And we can start discussing around sort of potential design strategy, pros and cons, facility program, any kind of challenges and missed opportunities. So I'd invite all of you to come to the floor. Feel free to raise your hand, unmute your mic, and let's get the discussion started.
Sean, there was a question, a couple questions in the chat that I wanted to feed you. One is, can you talk about the environmental challenges associated with the Hollywood Park site?
Sure. So if you go back to slide 15. Great. So, yep, there you go. So Hollywood Park site does have high environmental challenges, but it accounts for a couple of things. One is that as compared to Shaban site or kind of the Endelman Living Trust site, it's not under a regulated area, which means that it's not while it's under evaluation area, not under regulated area. So there is that sort of challenge. Regulated area has sort of some clear constraints, development constraints, but evaluation area has less so. In other words, evaluation area can allow for some flexibility. Now, the other sort of bigger environmental challenge on that site is sort of the thick tree coverage. We don't want to disrupt the tree coverage that's already there, and we want to make sure that any new facility does not really result in us sort of removing trees. So that's the reason why the building has been sort of nested further into the site, a little deeper into the site, as opposed to sort of the Hollywood Plaza option, where it was right up against the building or against the street edge. And that's done so to provide any disruption or minimize any disruption. Now, there might be additional sort of challenges in terms of water and site topography that we'll have to get into in the next phase of the design iterations.
Thank you. I see we have a raised hand from Michael Williams.
Thank you, Claire. It's good to see you again on the screen, and Krishan, thank you. I just wanted to say that the city has enjoyed working with the whole staff of planning for this, and as you all know, we worked a bunch with the Carrollton Enterprise folks up in Hollywood, and they remain a very big part of our center of commerce in North College Park, and just wanted to say that I think this is a great presentation. Our vote is, just going to depend on what I guess what the group and what we all come out to decide, but I'm really excited for it. As you know, we have a year-to-year agreement with the Carrollton Enterprise folks to host the farmers market in a certain area on the parking lot there, right outside of Mom's. And so we just look forward to working with Carrollton again to grow that area and to make it a successful venue for not just North College Park, but for everybody. So again, Krishan, this looks great. And just hello to everyone. I didn't say hi, but hi to everyone. And again, Claire, thank you for always being available for Mr. Young and our staff. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
I do not see other raised hands, but there are a lot of comments in the chat. So until or unless we have a raised hand, I'm going to go through some of those. There's some comments and some questions. There was a question. There have been a few questions related to stormwater. Do we envision, any sort of retaining pond? I think that question is probably for both the park site and the plaza site, though you did talk a bit about the park site. Can we talk about a little bit about stormwater management at the plaza site?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think especially for those of you who are familiar with sort of the plaza site topography, it is about sort of from Rhode Island Avenue, it is about probably good 9 to 10 feet below grade in a way. So I think what will need to be done is, especially sort of as we move further south, Charlie, if you can go to the next slide, we can probably look at the plan. There you go, perfect. So as you can see, sort of this is where the building is located. Hopefully, I'm going to change the color of my marker so it's a little bit more visible. This is where the building is located. There is a great difference, like I said, between Rhode Island and kind of the existing parking right here. Now, there will be, once we take out the parking and kind of add a little bit more sort of permeable surfaces, especially landscape elements, including kind of the plaza surface, but also kind of the interior courtyard, there'll be sort of some way of managing stormwater runoff. But then from the building, we can think about from a LEED perspective and kind of from sustainability perspective, we can think about collecting and harvesting rainwater. So that's that'll basically with the aim that it'll start to slow down all the stormwater runoff. Now, even after that, if the site does need sort of a stormwater drainage, I think there is a potential that the area at the back right here, we can start to sort of think about a mini stormwater pond. The fact that there hasn't been any stormwater pond on the site may not imply that we need it, but I think we have to be a little bit conscious about how we tackle that. We don't want it to sort of flow right into the sort of the city sort of gutter system. So we'll want to think about it a little creatively. In long story short, it does seem like the site has ample amount of area to tackle that should there be a need, but a lot of it should be, in our opinion, should be dealt at the building level as opposed to thinking about yet another piece of infrastructure.
I do see a raised hand, Oscar Gregory.
Hi. What is not mentioned in the Hollywood Plaza, the Hollywood Park scenario is some time ago when the discussion was being brought up about the FBI building being built around the Greenbelt Metro Center, which that still may be something that's maybe decided on having it done. The runoff just from that building itself would inundate a lot of the neighborhood that's back over there, not only for the park, but also beyond that. And it was a huge concern for the residents that live down there, since it's a low-lying area. One of the things about the park is that the reason why there's the park and planning buys parks is because of flooding and allowing that grass and environmental area, the trees and so forth, to be able to absorb some of that. If you build a building and take away some of that away, then it just adds more to the problem. The Hollywood Plaza would be, I think I agree wholeheartedly with Todd Ritzel, who said that, hey, it's already got impervious surface there. And you're not going to damage a whole lot of stuff. It's if you drop a building on asphalt, essentially. So I don't know if you even consider. I mean, you're certainly not talking about the environmental impact coming in from Greenbelt towards the plaza, but I did want to make mention of that, and it's something that's been discussed at nauseum quite some time ago, probably before you guys got a hold of it. But anyway, I just want to bring that up.
Sure. Thank you for that comment. And Claire, you might have a little bit more history on the site that I do. But one quick note, if you look at the sort of terrain, the entire sort of topography of this section, at least on west of the tracks, kind of goes north-south, right? So it basically goes down like the arrow that I've just drawn. And what ends up happening is that if you look at Endelman property, one of the sites that we kind of looked at, which is down here somewhere, kind of outside the drawing that you see, that site, even in sort of peak summer, is sort of very wet and mushy in a way because of all sort of the stormwater runoff there. Now, your point about new potential development on east of the track is very valid. This is sort of, I'm just kind of trying to highlight the area right here. But it is worth noting that you do have these sort of huge tracks that kind of channel all the water and all the sort of the runoff along the edges and kind of goes north-south. Now, this is not to say that we shouldn't be accounting for it, but there is a way, there could be, if we haven't done sort of the broad study of runoff, but there could be a potential way where we can start to look at it and ways to sort of have mini stormwater ponds or mini kind of collection strategies across the way so that we can minimize runoff as the water kind of moves south. But I don't know.
Right. I'm sorry. I don't even interrupt, but we've heard the stories, the similar stories with District 3 and South College Park. It was particularly with the Girard Run down there, the Girard Road Run. And they still get, with all good intentions, they still get flooding because of the way it's being handled. And so all the good plans, but we see what the impact is, the actual impact is. So I just, considering the two sites, I would agree with Todd Ritzel that the plaza would be best. I frankly prefer the Shaban property, but that's just my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And, again, part of the important part of having this dialogue with the community is to hear your concerns, better understand them, be able to look into them further.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. We appreciate it. We've gotten a lot of comments here. I'm going to try to scroll back up a little bit. There is a question about, can these be enlarged? We will put these on the website. So you'll be able to jump in and view that a little bit more. There's the comment again, Mr. Gregory, about the Shaban property. The Shaban property, we did explore, and again, as Kushan said, some of these other properties are not completely off the table. And if, any of this, any negotiation with the existing property owner were to fall through, or, the community was extremely opposed to the Hollywood Park site, we can explore other properties. But the Shaban property, because of its size, one of the things that it was not giving us when we were looking at it was really this indoor-outdoor and public space feel that the other two sites provide, particularly the shopping center, as a real community and civic hub for the community. The Shaban property is much smaller. It is very close to, we would have to site the building very close to some houses along the back. And it really would be you drive to it, you go inside, you come back out to your car and you leave without, having any of that community flavor or feel. Not to say that it's not possible, but it's much more challenging site. Let's see. We talked about environmental challenges. I like the idea of using existing county space. Who's going to mitigate noise and traffic damage to the neighborhood right in front of Hollywood Park? We have talked about this a little bit, and again, hearing from the community is important because you live right there and we do not. However, part of our thinking here related to noise and traffic is one, so you do have the noise of the metro right there, which is a semi-loud noise. And I think our opinion was that a community center, the noise cost of the community center would be a much less noise than that type of noise. The community center is not a multi-generational center, which are some of those larger centers that we're building. Those kind of centers are going to have competitions. They're going to have basketball competitions and swimming competitions. They're going to have lots of people in them. Really all you're going to get, competition wise at this type of center is, a practice, maybe some pickup games, some after school. You're not going to get, those massive amounts of people at this type of center. It's going to be, seniors in the morning and some kids in the afternoon, and in the evening coming to do, or at weekends coming to do dance class. So you're not going to get, those massive amounts of people that you're going to see at like a Fairland or a Sports and Learning. And currently the fields are permitted today, and they would continue to be permitted tomorrow. So our hope was that there would not be massive increased traffic and noise at those sites. Let's see, any other questions? There are many other questions. I'll just go through here. There are a lot of, opinions in here about, for and against, and we will go through all of these and read them and take it all into consideration. Has any consideration been given to what would induce less driving, i.e. more walkable, bikeable, transit accessible between the two sites? So I think the question is, which site is the more walkable, bikeable, transit accessible site?
Well, interestingly, I think if you look at accessibility, Plaza site provides a lot better alternative in that sense. I think the park site, while it is close to a metro station, but I think people either sort of prefer to either walk, bike, or drive, at least from the survey responses that we got. And I think that from an access perspective makes a lot more sense. Plus, I think if you look at Rhode Island and even Baltimore for that matter, Rhode Island has sort of bus connectivity as well. So I think there are additional advantages there. It is centrally located. Folks can walk from sort of around the North College Park study area quite easily, as opposed to some of the other sites, like including the park site, which are sort of further west. So I think that from an accessibility standpoint, I would say Plaza 100% provides a lot better, sort of a lot better alternative. And also, I think the city sort of has invested in bike infrastructure that also will kind of play into things. If we go to, Charvi, if you can go to the plan, slide 23, 20, yeah, let's go to slide 23. Because I do want to mention that we are thinking, I'm just going to make this sort of sort of block right here, but we are thinking about sort of a micro mobility hub. There is an existing bus stop right there, but can we start to sort of think about that to be an integral part of the facility? So we had sort of interesting discussion where one of the community members really said if we pushed or kind of pull the building, not push, but pull the building closer to Rhode Island Avenue, there are certain grade issues, challenges there, which can potentially add to sort of the overall cost. But if you were theoretically, if you could pull the building closer to Rhode Island Avenue, you can really start to think about a mobility hub that's integrated and part of the sort of community center. So bike station, kind of a micro mobility hub that includes scooters, be it sort of e-scooters or some of the sort of Revel type scooters that are picking up steam. We can start to have that as sort of a way to kind of get to the facility in a way. So there's definitely, from an accessibility connectivity standpoint of view, this site probably scores a lot higher than the other one.
Thanks, Krishan. Oscar Gregory has his hand raised again.
I apologize. Just really quick question, and I'm going to drop the Shaban thing, but I just wanted to see does the plan for the Shaban property, does it also include the College Park community center next to it? In other words, Todd Mitchell just brought up, yeah, there's streetscape. They're actually closing off that street. So, and I'm sure the city of College Park would not have a problem coughing up their community center in order to increase, to allow more land to be able to drop a building there, the community center there. Having said, so the question is, was that when you're planning, when you're looking at the Shaban, dropping a building at Shaban property, did that also include the College Park community center area as well? And I think so the Hollywood streetscape is not being mentioned on it. So they're closing off, they're making a really nice area in that area, in that section, closing off the side streets and making it walkable. In addition, the plaza is, if you want, for economic purposes, if you want to draw crowds into your restaurants and your stores and so on, that's the ideal place to have it there. So my 2 cents.
Thank you, appreciate that. We did look at I think it's the Youth and Family Services building next door. We did explore both those sites. We did not talk about the fact that that road was being closed off. That's new information for us, so thank you for that. Again, we'll continue to explore. We're still only in feasibility. So we can talk more about that offline and try to explore that a little bit. All right, I think most of what I see is comments and not exactly questions. A lot of positive in favor of the shopping center site. A lot of comments about, again, about stormwater, some comments about using temporary structures, market. Oh, we have some hands raised. Okay. Julie Beavers.
Sorry, I'm driving, so I'm listening through my phone. And can you go over the whole farmers market piece again? I thought I heard you say that it was like going to be indoors and outdoors.
Oh, so it's going to be, well, it's all of it is going to be outdoors, but there
Okay.
is a way for us to kind of design the space in a way that it's sort of facing the parking. I'm not sure if you can look at the screen if you're on your phone, but if you could, there is sort of this plaza space that faces the parking. So that's where so if you go to the next slide or kind of the plan, Charvi, that'd be perfect. There you go. So I'm going to draw here, right here, conceptually, like if this is the area where your farmers market can sort of folks can come in, they can kind of set up their sort of mini tents, but also if we keep this section, which is sort of the connector walk sort of this sort of connector between the two wings of the building, if we keep that space open, in other words, if you could go from this to this, then it starts to sort of give you sort of more spaces for like spillover spaces. So you can imagine people kind of getting their food and still kind of sitting under the tree and kind of having their sort of quick meal or quick food. Or you can have sort of additional events. You can have sort of additional pop-up events that complement farmers market. So the idea was to sort of have the market be on the interior of the building, but by interior we mean the open courtyard deck, which is central to the building.
Okay. So I guess my concern is that I just don't know if that's enough space. I mean, because there's so many regulations with prepared food from the county that, you know, they have to have a certain amount of space around their site. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to take a look at this a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, right now we have about 17,000 square feet between sort of the front plaza and courtyard deck, which I'm presuming should be sort of more than kind of what the current farmers market already uses. But I think there can be ways where the space can be structured so there is enough space between vendors, if that's a concern.
And I'll also share that, you know, again, we're in concept. And we will move into design if, you know, we decide to move forward with this and it gets funding, we would then move into a design process. And so there is opportunity, you know, it could be that we flip the building and instead of in kind of an N shape that it is, it ends up being a U. And, you know, maybe then, you know, there's a lot more space. So there's opportunity to continue this dialogue and make sure that, you know, we're creating a space that's usable for the current user that's there.
Okay, thank you so much.
And Carissa Janice. Oh, Carissa, did we just lose you?
Okay, sorry. Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. The question, a follow-up comment. There was mention of intergenerational, and I missed it. Were you saying that the community center will be intergenerational or it won't be?
So sorry, Claire, do you wanna go first? Oh, you might be on mute.
Thank you. I didn't know if that was in response to my comment about that this is not a multi-generational center. So the multi-generational centers are just a terminology that we use to describe our really big centers in the county, from 60,000 to 100,000 square feet. Every center is multi-generational. It's just a terminology that we're using, if that's what the question is about. This community center will have teen room, senior room, classes for kids, classes for adults, classes for seniors, just run the whole gamut of age, ability, interest, etc.
Okay, thank you. So there's a lot of us who would really like to see a committed senior center at the new community center. So one reason I ask, and the other thing is also if I could urge you to keep in mind accessibility for seniors at the community center. Just my personal comment about everybody else's. There is a bus stop right in front of the Hollywood Plaza Shopping Center. So that makes it particularly good for people who don't want to.
Definitely.
Thank you. There's a question about how many attendees the center will hold, and if it's a community center, does that mean that no one drives to it? Our centers, we try to locate the smaller centers within, a 5-minute drive time of the community that it's serving, although all our community centers are meant to serve the entire county. There's a lot of people in the county that bounce from one center to the other based on, a particular class that they're offering, a specialty that they might have at another center. Only certain centers have ceramics, for example. So it's not always the people right in the community using it, but it often is. So, community center, meaning that it is for the community, and the term community can be the immediate community, but also the broader community of Prince George's County. Oh, there's been some questions about a test building. So we have discussed, separate from this, sometimes utilizing unused retail front store spaces to have classes. And, as a way to, one, kind of revitalize shopping centers that are, have a lot of vacant spaces. Also to test out classes, test out market. We did do a needs analysis and some market study for this particular center, and found that, College Park Community Center is one of our busiest centers, and that there is a market north of that center that was not being adequately served by having the College Park Community Center there, plus the fact that the people who use the College Park Community Center find that the classes are full very quickly. So we did do a bit of a market analysis. We looked at some private, especially when we did some of our other studies recently, we looked at private recreational uses and did find that there were gaps in this area. So while we didn't do an analysis of exactly yet at this point how many classes would be here, again, classes can fluctuate. So you might do, one particular dance class or a Zumba class for a while, and then that might transition to a different type of class just based on what the community is asking for. What will be done to ensure this doesn't cannibalize the local fitness studio? So we do offer different price points than private. So, we are often less expensive. A lot of those local fitness studios do have a bit of a niche. I know up there in the north part of the county, I think there's a CrossFit, there's a Spin, might be the Orange Series up Route 1. They do have those niche classes. And I think that our hope and what we've seen at other parts of the county is that, we tend to complement those classes and not repeat them or try to duplicate them. And so, if there is a CrossFit that's thriving nearby, we're probably not going to do CrossFit as at our center because there is CrossFit. For example, if there's no Zumba nearby, then maybe that's somewhere where we can be complementary. How many floors will the community center have? The community center will be single story. The reason you see the gymnasium looks a little bit taller is because it has a much higher ceiling. Therefore, it's going to have a higher roof, but it's a single story building. There's been a few questions about seniors. Can we have a larger portion of the center devoted to seniors, and can provide some of the things offered at the Laurel Beltsville Senior Activity Center and other senior centers in the county? So we did talk a little bit in the beginning, about whether this would be a senior center or a multi-generational, to use a different terminology there. And while we want to make sure that we are catering to seniors here, we didn't want it to be exclusively for seniors. So there is senior space. There is also teen space. The multi-purpose spaces can be used for any purpose. And so if we find that there are a lot of seniors coming here and they need additional space and additional programming, we have that flexibility to do that. We won't be hosting meals like Laurel Beltsville does, but if we find that there is a need and people are coming, we can tailor that programming and the use of those spaces to meet those needs. Hopefully that's helpful. And also the times that seniors use the center is different than the times often that younger families will use the center. Seniors tend to use it during the day. Families tend to use the evening, weekend. And so that makes it more so the center is used all the time instead of, just during the day in those morning hours.
And the only thing that I'll add to that, Claire, is that both the options and potentially sort of any other option that we end up creating have sort of a lot of flex spaces. So I just marked sort of this one flex space, which is the interior walkway. When Claire said, when we can kind of close the doors off, and that becomes sort of a mini room in itself that can be used for any other potential sort of programmatic needs. So it's just about sort of how many things, how many programs, what is the demand, and how can we use some of these flex and multi-purpose rooms for different kind of needs.
I know we're a little bit over our time. So I will just, there was a question about pickleball be available in the gym. We get a lot of requests for pickleball. I'm going to add you to my, it's like I should keep a tally of pickleball requests. So yeah, as we're diving deeper into the programming, we can start to have those conversations about, how's the gymnasium lined and how are the rooms decorated as we get into the design process to make sure the program is more fleshed out in that at that point. With that,
Great.
I think we'll probably end this. I thank you everybody for attending. We're gonna take the chat and we'll be able to download it and look through it. We will put the slides on the site. We will put the recording on the website. Just want to make sure that everybody has access to this. And as we have next steps, as we have the report ready, we will continue to update the community, make sure that the website is up to date. We do have a budget hearing, I believe, tomorrow night. And I know that, some of our elected officials wanted to speak about this at the budget hearing. So, feel free to tune into that. And everybody have a wonderful evening. If any of our elected officials want to have any last final words before we sign off, please come off mute.
No, I don't have anything. Tom, if you would like to wrap it up, please go ahead. Thank you.
Just want to thank everybody for their participation and the hard work from the consultants and park and planning, and a lot of excellent comments. I'm sure they'll be taken into account. And I think I did notice one potential flaw that a couple of people raised, which was that the choice between the two options did not give a none of the above option. But I think it's fair to say that the none of the above options were heard. So thank you all.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you all. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.